G'day Maths Legends. It's common knowledge that 99% of monsters are very good at maths, except if you count Dracula. Guys, today we're going to be all learning all about how we can calculate percentages and how we can read them. All right, good luck with your sums.
Okay, so here we've got some information about some percents. And this can be quite a tricky concept, but once you learn a couple of little hacks and little ideas of ways of working, it actually makes it much easier. So I'm going to go over a couple of those with you today, and you might need to watch this one a couple of times because it is a little bit tricky. But let's first have a look at percentage or percentage of numbers. So up the top here where you can see that I've got 50%. Well, that's the same as saying half. So 50% of 10 is 5. It's half of 10. So if you go somewhere and there's something on sale that's $10, a pencil case, it's $10, and there's a 50% off sale on it, well, that's going to be half. You're paying half the price that it is. So you've got $5 off, and the actual sale is $5 itself. That's easy, and we know that that's half. It does get a little bit trickier though when you have things like 25%. Now, 25% is the same as saying a quarter of something. So we need to get really good at converting percentages to decimals and to fractions. So 25% is the same as saying 1/4, or the same as saying 0.25. And 25 plus 25 is 50, and then 50 plus 25 is 75, and then 75 plus 25 is 100. So if we times 25 by 4, like we've done here with the denominator, okay, we know that equals 100, okay? So that's why that is 1/4. So that's basic understanding of those percentages. 1% is easy. It's basically if it's $100, 1% it's going to be $1 off. What we can do though is we can actually add some of these numbers together, especially when it comes time to 10%, and that's the hack I'm going to teach you. If I want to figure out what's 30% off a price, I need to figure out what 10% is, and then I add that 3 times over to find out how much percentage I'm taking off. I'll go over that with you. So down the bottom here, you've got 10% is the same as saying 10 over 100. 25% is the same as 25 over 100. 12.5 is the same as saying 1/8. Okay, so sometimes you'll see things at 12.5%. A lot of the time they say 15%, I suppose, and that's similar to there. And then 50% is there too. However, we're getting big now, and we need to start being able to apply formulas to some of our working out. And down the bottom here, I've actually added the formula for you to find the percentage of, and it's part. So it could be, what the percentage is. So you might say, well, it's 12% off $30. So 12 divided by 30 times 100 gives me my percentage raw score. I'm going to go over that with you in the next couple. Okay, we've got some really good demonstrations here of what those percentages look like. I'm going to start with the first one, and the first one looks at, it wants me to find 25%. So what I'm going to do is, I know that 25% is half of 50. So I'm going to start off by going, well, there's 50%. So if I roll a line through there, now I've got 50% on one side, 50% on the other. I'm going to rule a line through the middle there. I'm going to cut that in half again, and that gives me 25%. Well, 25 over 100 is the same as saying 1/4. So I'm going to shade this part here, okay? The next one, I've got 30%. Now, I count up how many squares I've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm now going to go, well, I've got 3 over 10, or 30 over 100. I know that out of my 10 squares, I've got to shade 3. There's 10%, 20%, 30%. You see the relationship between percentages and fractions? It's super important that you can swap them between those and decimals. The next one is 75%. So I know that if I go 25% plus another 25 gives me 50%, and 50 plus 25 again is 75%. Now 75% is the same as saying 75 over 100, and if I simplify that down, that is 3/4, just the same as it looks there. Okay. Sometimes drawing pictures of your percentages does help, just like we're doing here. Now I've got 20%. Now I know that if I times 20 times 5, that's going to equal 100. Okay. And if I go 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, all of that is going to add up to 100. Now I only need to find 20%, so I'm going to shade in one of those, and that's going to give me that 100. Okay, so that's looking at it, shading those shapes. Let's jump down a little bit now and let's have a look at the next part, which is looking at finding 10% of numbers, and this is what you'll predominantly be doing. 10% over 60, I can apply my formula here. I can say, well, 10 divided by 60 times 100. So that's going to be my formula to find that. But I don't have a calculator with me right now, so I'm going to teach you how to do that. If I divide 60 by 10, all right, that's going to give me 0.6. Okay, that's going to give me 0.6. That means I'm actually going to have, so 10% of 60 is 0.6. I divide 60 by 10. Gives me 6. So 10% of 60 is 0.6. Now I'm taking that away. What is 10% of 60? Well, I know it's 6, right? But if it's 10% off a $60 hat, I'm going to subtract the 6 from the 60, which will give me 54. Okay, calculate the following, 54. You've got to read those very carefully. Let's look at the next one. 25% of 64. Well, I know that if I add 25 plus 25, it's 50. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to say I could either divide 65 because I know that 25 is the same as saying 1/4. Okay, or I can double my 25%. So what is 50%? What is half of 64? Well, half of 64 is 32, right? But that's too much. I need to go, what's half of 32? Half of 32 is 16. So 16, okay, is 1. So 1/4 of 64 equals 16. Again, I could apply my formula like I made before, but I'm figuring out in the top of my head. I've just doubled that and I've said, well, 16. So 16 minus 64 is 48, okay? And so that's my answer there. I'm going to circle my answer because Mr. O likes you guys to circle yours on tests, and I'll get you to circle that one as well. 5% of 80, well, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to double this. I'm going to say, well, 10% of 80 is 8, and then half that, because that was 10, half of 8 is 4. So 4 is going to be my number, because half, so I'll go through that again. You've got 80, okay? I'm going to double the 5% to make it 10%, so 10% of 80 is 8, but then I've doubled that, so now I need to halve it. So instead of being 10% of 80, which is 8, I need to halve that again because I doubled that over here. I'm going to halve that again, which means 4. And then it's going to be $4 off $80, which is $76, okay? So that's my way of doing that, okay? You can, the next one is 50% of 75. Now we're going to have to go down to decimals here because I need to look at this like it's money. Let's imagine I've just bought a new pair of Richmond Tiger shorts and they were $75. So if I bought them when there was a 50% off sale, I'm paying half of $75, okay? So we need to figure out what half of $75 is. I can go round about, I can say, well, what's half of $70 is 32, half of $70 is 35. And then what's half of $5 is $2.50. So I can do that. So I go half of 70 is $35. Okay, so that's half of 70. And then half of 5 is 2.5. So I could say, well, in total, there's 37.5 is the price that I'm paying for my new Richmond Tiger shorts. Sorry, even teachers sometimes lose their concentration there. So 37.5 is how much I'll pay for that. This is confusing stuff, but using those little hacks of doubling or halving help you out, especially when you can find 10% of a number and then you can double that. If you can find 10% of 60, you can find 20%, 30% quite easily by doubling that 10% amount. Okay, so using the doubling strategy you guys have been using since prep. Okay guys, we're going to look at a couple more tricky sums here, and I'm going to show you a couple of little hints and tips at how I like to work things out. I'm not going to use my calculator. I can say with these, I can use my formula, and I can say, well, 24, my formula will tell me that I need to do 24 divided by the percentage off, which is 30%, times 100. And that will give me the percentage off, okay? I'm not going to use that strategy. I'm not going to use the formula because I'm actually going to do it without using a calculator. And I'm going to show you how you can do it too. Just simple hacks, because when you're in a shop and you want to look at how much a percentage might be off something around Christmas sale time, you need to be able to figure these things out for yourselves. So I'm not going to work on the half price because I feel like that one is just half of 24. So that's just $12. I feel like we're going to move on from that. We find something a bit trickier. I'm going to look at the 30% off, and I'm going to show you my trick for that. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go 10%, and then I'm going to times that 10% by 3. So let's look at 24 for a second. 10%, so if I've got 24, 10% of 24 is, I'm going to put 10% there, is 2.4. I'm just moving that decimal place over. Now that I've got 2.4, okay, I now need to times that by 3, because that's what I was talking about over here. I need to times that by 3. That'll give me my 30%. So 2.4 times 3 is, so what I do is I go 2.4 plus 2.4 is $4.80. And then another $2.40 is $7.20. So I then take $24, and I would encourage you to always make sure you're working down there. I'm going to go $24 minus my 7.2. So $24 minus 7.2 equals $16.80. I'm going to quickly work that out. Okay, just to work that out. So $16.80 is my first price. And I'd encourage you to always circle your answers to make it easier for the marker. All right, the next one's much, much easier. I've got $30, okay, $30, oh, doesn't like me at the moment, $30 and 10%. Minus 10% equals $3. And then as we did over there, we're going to times that by 3. And 3 times 3 equals 9. And so I'm going to take my $30 and I'm going to subtract $9, which equals $21. Okay? So that's how we work that one out. So by working that 10% out, it helps us out a fair bit. I'm going to quickly do I'll do the socks now, because I do the shoes, and you can have a go at doing the socks yourself. So I've got $45 minus 10% equals, so 10% of 45, 10% of 45 is 4.5, and then I'm going to times 4.5 times 3 equals $13.50. So I'm going to go 45 minus $13.50, and $45 minus $13.50 equals $31.50. 50 cents, so $31.50. Why don't you have a go at figuring out 12? Pause the video here and we'll get back to that one. Okay, hopefully you got that one right. So let's have a look at it. 12 and 10% of $12 is 1.2. I times that by 3, which gives me 3.6. I then say $12 minus 3.6 is $8.40. And I go through and I quickly circle all my answers to make it easy for the marker. All right, tricky concept. Good luck with your sums. So the final part of this video is to look at our understanding and to see where we are using that Mazzano self-assessment scale. So we're one of the 4 areas down below. I'm going to go through those with you very quickly now. So beginning is that we really don't understand the task. We're still unsure, and we may need to re-watch that video again. And the next stage is our developing. So we've learnt it, we understand parts of it, but there are still questions that need to go. We've still got questions before we get to that better understanding. So the next one is our competent. This means that we understand it quite well. We can work independently, but there is still, and we can problem solve by ourselves. But there may be some areas that we're still struggling with. And finally, we're at that proficient stage. This means that we understand it very, very well. We're getting most of our questions correct. And we could actually hold our own masterclass that we could actually teach other people how to do this concept as well. Okay, very important that we look at our Mazzano self-assessment. Whereabouts are we in relation to our understanding?